All right, welcome to Beers with Bud. We today we've got Zach Boyd with us. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so today we got a very special guest, Zach. You've been around the world once or twice. Shook everyone's hands once, right?
Here and there, a little bit.
I appreciate you being on, man. So to start things off, what's going on with your world, and what's typically the beer and the way you like to relax and how you like to drink your beer?
Well, first off, I'd like to head over to the Stanley, get a little bit of Pliny the Elder. It's hard to get, but they come in once a month. It's Russian River Brewery. That's considered monk beer, but it's great.
So wait, real quick, what does monk beer mean? Like, what is that?
From what I understand, it started as a monastery that brewed, and they sold it to help keep up the monastery and get everything done, but eventually get sold out to Russian River. And so they have a couple different things with Pliny the Elder, Pliny the Younger. Pliny the Elder is hard to get. Pliny the Younger is even harder to get.
Okay, so this is Buddhist beer then we're talking about. I mean, talk about monasteries and stuff, right?
Back in the day, yeah, Northern California, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So pretty tasty, though.
No kidding. And you said it's hard to get.
It is. So the place where I get it in Denver, it's they sell one case per month to the liquor store.
Wow.
And they come in, I think they're 22-ounce bottles, but they limit you to 2 per person to buy, and they sell out within the next couple of days usually.
Wow.
It's good stuff, though.
And so being in Denver, I'm sure that stuff goes by real quick, right?
It does.
Yeah. So let me ask you, do you so that's pretty interesting shit as far as, Buddhist beer and trying to support monasteries and stuff. But like do you typically find yourself wanting to go to like a specific brewery,
no.
A specific type of beer?
No, I like domestic.
Yeah.
Just Coors Light, Bud Light, Busch Light.
Yeah, the classics, the staples.
Yep, all the way.
Yeah.
Not a big craft beer guy, but this one I love.
Right on. Well, that's cool, man. I definitely would like to try that sometime, especially on this podcast. It'd be cool to have. So maybe one day we can get you back on here and we can share some of that beer together. But that's badass, man. I think that's really cool. So with that being said, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're up to nowadays, and where you've been, what you do, all your hobbies and all that stuff.
So I've recently moved down to Denver from up here, Greeley. As you know, I came from San Diego during the COVID outbreak. My brother was overseas, so I came up to help take care of my nephew while he was gone. One of the best things I've ever done. Very happy doing it. Love the kid. After that, kind of found myself in a little bit of like a blur of nothing going on until your wife actually recommended me for a job with her company. And I accepted the job, moved down to Denver, and kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Kind of liking it.
That's
it's,
cool.
A lot of hours at this point, a lot of training, but got me back in kind of a regimented schedule.
Right.
So
you, obviously with a world pandemic going on, a lot of people get affected by that and in all kinds of different ways. So, it's safe to say that you had some kind of fallback or regression as far as like a daily schedule and being able to have some kind of normalcy and routine that got broken up by, a big pandemic. And so you, like many other people, even myself, try to figure out something to try to cope with that, right? And say, hey, I need a schedule. I need something to do. In this pandemic is hard to get around. So you came from San Diego when that happened, right?
I did. So we were going full force. We had 7 offices down in SoCal. And at that point, SoCal was batshit.
Let me stop you right there just to ask, what were you doing when you lived in San Diego?
I was the general manager of a company, Tradesman International, for San Diego office. One of 7 offices down there in Southern California. And we were basically staffing large construction projects, large commercial, and then consulting for them. And when the pandemic hit, everything kind of turned upside down. We had nothing to do. So they kind of reached to the regional director spot and removed a bunch of the spots down in California. So at that point, California was getting crazy. I mean, things were shutting down. People were like hitting the stores, selling everything out. It was lines, craziness.
So was this around the time where the toilet paper pandemic kind of came out?
It was. And you'd go down there and the shelves were empty.
Yeah.
Every shelf was empty.
I just got to take a shit, dude. Like,
yeah. I mean, it was a little intense because you're on the border right down there too.
Yeah.
And people were, I mean, like I said, they were just getting panicked. And it was weird. I was in the same spot during 9/11 in San Diego, same city. And it seemed to be that people during 9/11 or right afterwards were not in as much of an uproar or panic as they were during this COVID outbreak.
Yeah.
Which was interesting to me because
you lived through both.
Whether you believe pandemic's a threat or not a threat, there was the difference in how people reacted to it. And it was interesting to see that down there.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people on all sides of the political and belief spectrum say, they would never wish another 9/11 happened ever again. But they all say, I wish there was another 9/12, right? The day after that horrible,
the camaraderie.
Yeah. The day after that horrible incident that happened, how united the nation was as a whole, as far as like a single direction, a single fucking clear view forward of culture, belief, unity, right? There's so many people on 9/12 that were like, you know what, we can never let this type of thing happen again on our homeland because
there was zero division.
Right.
Zero division. Whereas with the pandemic, there's a lot of different beliefs and aspects that people think. So
and there's a lot of misinformation here and there, or even opinion pieces that people consider misinformation that, someone just simply explaining their opinion on it, it will get deemed as misinformation. It's like, well, that's just someone speaking their opinion on it. That doesn't mean that they were trying to tell people and lead people down a certain path of anything. They're just expressing how they feel.
Well, and people were a little bit more outspoken about this subject because they were, whatever they believed on either side of it, they were almost militant about it.
Right.
I mean, as far as masks, no masks, anything like that, I respect both sides. It doesn't matter to me. I don't think I need to wear a mask, but if I'll make somebody else more comfortable wearing one, I'll do it. I don't care.
Right.
It's not a big deal to me. But it seems like people put a lot more effort into, speaking out about this than they did back after 9/11, which is weird to me.
Right.
And like I said, the only reason I brought it up because it was odd. I was in the same city for both things.
Both incidents.
Because I was stationed down there at that point, and then just happened to be back there this last year.
That's pretty wild.
It was weird.
I mean, what's that differential in years, right? 20.
A lot.
20 years. Is that 20 years?
20 years.
That's crazy, man.
Yep.
And how many places did you move between there, right?
San Diego, Georgia, Florida, Colorado, Nevada, California.
That's wild. And that all happened within 20 years, right?
Yep.
Which, I mean, when you look at it in the spectrum of like, well, you moved around for your job because you had to, or your profession, fine, right? But then to be in the same place, in the same city of two major events that have happened in our lifetimes, right? That's pretty wild,
It was, and I might have been a little bit sheltered on the aspect when I was in 2001 during 9/11 because, I was on a military base. So, you see a different side of it than you would in a civilian life.
Well, I would imagine if you're on a military base during 9/11.
Straight lockdown.
Well, not only that, but I would imagine that you could literally look around and see people on the base with the concern on their face or like the whole different emotional response to something like that.
Yeah. You saw terror. You saw anger. Wrath.
It was like
people
anger,
wanting revenge. People
fear,
like
right?
there were so many different aspects of it.
Yeah.
We had folks on our base that were, of Middle Eastern descent that were terrified. Because they didn't know how the rest of the base would react to them. Luckily, we never saw any instance of hate crime or people, singling them out. But you could see that they were terrified,
I would
and
imagine.
you could also see people that were just so filled with wrath and anger, especially New Yorkers. I mean, we had a couple guys from Brooklyn that were, hell bent.
For sure.
They were hell bent.
I could imagine.
So,
Well, so let me ask you a question. Going back to when both of these things happened, right? You have all these different reactions because there's different things going on. And 9/11 was an instant reaction type thing. And then you have COVID that was kind of like a developing issue, right? The government and the world as a whole started restricting and implementing and saying, hey, this can't happen, blah, blah, blah. But during 9/11, it was instant, right? An incident happened. People jumped too, and they that was probably a big reason.
Well, it's because 9/11 was factually based. This was an incident that happened. During the COVID Act, there was a lack of knowledge and a lack of facts that came out.
Well,
so people
to interrupt you, I still think that is a case, right? Lack of knowledge, lack of people really understand what's going on, and so governments, people, local communities, businesses are kind of all just trying to react the best they can with it to ensure that they're trying to protect themselves.
Of course, right? I mean
Yeah.
I mean, people are always going to be looking to protect themselves, like you said. But when you don't have all the facts, when you're kind of left open to interpret it in your own way, you have different media outlets saying different things, and nobody really has any idea what the hell's going on. I think that makes it worse.
Right.
And I think that's probably the reason, now that I think about it, that people were more in a panic mode is because they, fear of the unknown.
Right.
Whereas in 9/11, it's like, this happened.
Yeah.
We know what's up.
Right.
And that's a little different.
That's kind of what I meant about, there was an incident that happened. It was immediate. There's a reaction that needs to happen after that, right? Sequence of events kind of thing, right? And you look at the COVID pandemic, and it was kind of a slow evolution of what's happening. And it still is to this day kind of that same thing. You got states that are saying, rates are high, variants are coming in. We don't know what to do. We're just going to keep things locked down. You got other states that are saying that's never been proven to be right. We're just going to keep everything open, or we're going to open more things up because we don't know how to handle it at all, right? A lot of states and a lot of governors, a lot of local communities are like, lockdowns have not been any effect at all from where we live geographically, right? Our local community, none of the lockdowns have helped. They've only been a detriment because of, commerce, mental health, people staying at home, people not being in a solid routine of things. So people in local communities say, well, you know what? We tried the lockdowns because that's what the majority of the world was doing. And we figured that was going to be the best step forward, right? Trying to help our community, our local population, the people that, allow our community to function on a daily basis. So they implement these lockdowns initially. And now we get to this point where they're like, well, we're losing a shit ton of money. Businesses are shutting down. We need people to come in here and absolutely just stimulate the economy, buy our products, support our businesses. And so I think right now, where we are in the whole pandemic as a nation, I think is so concentrated on what we have available locally and what our local leaders in government and in our states are allowing to happen. You know what I mean? So if you live where we live, a lot of businesses don't require much of COVID standards at all, just because they say, you know what, we are not going to limit you as a customer in our place of business because we want you to spend your money here. We need you to spend your money here for us to stay afloat. And for us to stay afloat, we are employing local community members. We are employing teenage kids, adults, people that need a steady paycheck to come in and so they can provide for their family. They're supplying that service to local communities.
Sure.
And you as a citizen are also doing the same thing by purchasing and abiding by these or participating in giving these people your business.
And even where I'm at, 55 miles away?
Yeah.
It's completely different just because of population base. If you lose a couple customers, it's not a big deal. you have just because of the population, you have people coming in no matter what.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're still in pretty high restrictions down in the Denver area because people will follow. I mean, and if, like I said, if you lose somebody, somebody else is coming in just by sheer numbers.
Right.
Whereas here in Greeley, it's a little different. It's a little bit more loyal, a little bit more mom and pop here,
Yeah.
you know, and there's something to be said for that. But, you know, I think that's why you see it in these larger cities because there's, you know, it's not going to really affect them as much.
Well, yeah, they definitely have numbers on their side as far as being able to, you know, try to keep up their profit margin. And I don't mean to put it down to just that aspect of things, but most people in smaller communities are trying to live their life in a more normal fashion, right? Because they are not as
Well, and it's more
by it.
personal.
Right? They're not as affected by it. You know what I mean? They're just not. Geographically speaking and population wise, they're just not as affected by it as these larger cities are. So when you break it down to location, it's almost, I don't want to say it's tribalism, but where people live definitely takes some kind of factor in how you treat the remedy to what you consider to be a pandemic, right?
Well, exactly, because like you said, in the bigger cities, it's not personal. It's not like ingrained in them. Like whereas here, you know the guy that owns this business,
Right.
where you want to see him succeed. You don't want to see him hurt. Whereas in Denver, big city, they don't know the guy. They don't give a shit.
Right.
Like here, I mean, for instance, the pizza place we go to all the time, Pizza and Pub. I mean, he's been staunch against this the whole time because it was affecting his bottom line.
Right.
But I mean, you saw how many people stood up and basically tried to help him out, carried him through this. You know, you're not going to see that in a bigger city, but but they have the numbers. It doesn't personally hit you.
Right. And he was the type of person that, amongst others around here, that kind of stepped up to the plate as far as like,
they formed the coalition.
Not only that, but it's like, hey, you know what? All we want to do is provide a service for the people in this community. And we're having other individuals involved in the government or local government, big government, that say they don't want us to do this because of, you know, the reasons of being in a pandemic or whatever the case may be. So they said, you know what? All we're trying to do is provide a service for.
Well, I believe he said at the point too, he's not worried about his bottom line, about making big profits. He was more worried about keeping his employees, you know,
Right.
their income. That was more what he was into.
Right. Once again, you know, providing the service to citizens.
Yeah.
As far as,
You know, because he took it
employing
personal.
Right. Yeah.
You know, he couldn't just replace him with somebody else. He treated him like family.
And he does need to meet a bottom line in order to pay his employees, right?
Obviously,
But-
he needs to break even at least. And I think
Right.
that's what he's worried about.
Right.
But he wasn't worried about, you know, making a profit at that point. It was staying afloat.
Right.
You know, and the community cared about that. His employees cared about it. His friends cared about it. I mean, you saw people posting things and putting stuff in the GoFundMe from other states,
Oh yeah.
you know, based on what he was saying. But you don't see that as much in the bigger cities because it's not personal.
Right. Well, I mean, typically when you go into bigger cities like that, almost everything is franchised, right? I mean, how many 7-Eleven corner stores do you have in Denver? I mean, they're
I have probably 5 within 10 blocks.
and that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here is the fact that like almost everything's franchised. There's a very few amount of mom and pop type shops in these big cities with over 1 million people population wise.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if these people end up deciding not going there one day or don't go back there ever again, these people that decide that don't care, right? Because it's a corporation that they're not giving money
What's
to.
a numbers game?
Right. And the corporation doesn't miss them because someone else is just, like you said, stepping up to take their place in it. They don't give a shit.
I mean, I got to give Denver credit for it. There's a couple places we frequent, a good friend of mine and I, and we'll go in there and it's all local business in this place. And he'll pay $7 for a cookie. I mean, it's a big cookie. It's damn good. Yeah. You know, instead of going to Costco or somewhere else and buying, you know, a pack of cookies just so he could support local.
Yeah.
You know, keep the people afloat. So Denver's been pretty good about it overall, but that's in little niche areas. You know, you don't see that at all. Like all
tiny
over.
pockets of the community, from the big city for sure. So you've ran businesses before then, right? I mean,
Yeah, a few.
right. So as a person that has ran businesses and being in that type of situation, like would you have kind of handled it more along the lines of you'd be servicing a customer, as far as pandemic's concerned, you'd be servicing a customer more or following regulation more that's passed down to you by the government? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's a tough way to decipher it because the number one goal in business is to please your customer. Do it the right way, no matter what. Don't sacrifice your quality. But when it comes into bottom line and getting enough work to keep that bottom line and keep you afloat, it's a fine line. My belief is do right by the customer, do right by your employees. You build loyalty with them, you treat them right. You guys are the ones that make your lifestyle possible. You're not the one out there in the crawl space. You're not the one out there, sucking shit out of a basement. These guys are. So you treat them well.
Right.
And small business is tough though because it's all word of mouth. I mean, you do one person dirty, the whole town hears about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and obviously the source itself has something to do with what's going on with that, right? If there's a guy that's a turd around the local community, he gets hired on a new job, he gets fired, he tries to slander the business. Most people don't take him and use him as a very good source of credibility, right? But to take care of your guys, right, is a big part of that, And you were running a business or two in the past. I think a lot of people don't understand that even corporations, large corporations and small businesses have one thing in common, or the fact that if they don't make their profit margin to a certain extent, they have to lay off employees. They have to fire people. They have to let people go. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that at all, right? A lot of people that are against corporations or against, monopolies, and I'm not saying that I'm for monopolies by any means. I understand the fact that like all these big companies employ thousands of people, and even local businesses can employ hundreds of people, right? And if you don't meet a certain profit margin, you have to fire someone. You have to let someone go. And that affects your bottom line.
You have a little bit more rope on a small business due to the point that in the larger corporations, they have the board and they have a certain profit margin they got to meet. And if they don't meet that, the boards are getting involved. Whereas with a small business, you can cut certain areas. If you have good ownership, good management, you'll cut there first before you lay people off. I think it's on the responsibility of the ownership to always take the hit first. When we were starting out, there was, for the first couple of years, it was tough. So the first person to sacrifice their check is the ownership.
Right.
You're worried about payroll, ARs, APs, make sure that cash is coming in. So you're taking the first couple of years, you're taking a personal line of credit instead of a business line of credit because it takes typically 3 years to build business credit.
Right.
So it's all on you or how many ever owners you have. We had 4. So we're pulling out our personal credit to make sure that everything's taken care of.
Right.
So, I mean, it's tough, but I think it's your responsibility as an owner to take care of your guys first.
Yeah.
Go a couple of weeks without a check because yours is coming down the road. When you actually make it and you're profitable, you'll see the residual at that point. But your guys are the ones that make that happen. And if you can't build loyalty with them, they're just going to walk. $2 more an hour, they're going to walk.
Right. And as a boss, as in general, right, you are responsible for everything that happens.
No question.
Right. The bulk of responsibility falls on the shoulders of the leader, right? And if you're the leader and the business owner, the manager, you have to take the brunt of that. And I've been in situations where that has to happen, right? You have to fucking sacrifice whatever, pay, time, money. You have to sacrifice those things in order to make sure that the people that you're leading or underneath you are taken care of first.
And the good and bad come with it. The praise goes to the boss. All the bad shit, you're responsible for.
Yeah, you get both, right? Especially as a boss, you can get both. You get praise and or shit on. But even if you do the right thing, sometimes you don't get anything for it.
Yeah, sometimes you just can't win.
You don't get anything for it, right? You can do the best of the worst situation, and some people may know or may not know the intricate details to understand how a task got accomplished.
They look at bottom line.
Right.
Is it right or is it wrong?
Yeah, and they say, "Oh, did it get done? Yeah, cool, thanks, good job."
Yeah, and it's not the employee at that point; it's the business.
Right, but overall, they may not understand that like someone had to come in on their day off, someone had to call in a babysitter, someone had to miss an event for their family to come in and make sure things happen so that business as usual proceeds.
But the consumer doesn't care.
Well, the consumer definitely doesn't care.
They don't care.
And even higher up leadership doesn't give a fuck.
No,
right?
I mean, with us, it was tough sometimes because you got to learn to eat crow. Because when I was young, first started in ownership, I was pretty cockstrong. I was like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're wrong. And I learned pretty quick that doesn't really go a long ways.
Yeah.
You got to learn to eat shit and to just take it. Say, I'm wrong. This is on me. I should have trained them better. I should have given them proper tools. It's on me.
Especially when you're young. Especially when you're younger. Like when you're first starting out anywhere. Even if you're old and you're starting at a new job. I mean, there's people that are able to retire at a younger age, like 50. And I say that as a young age, as a retirement, right? There are some people that can retire at that young of an age. And sometimes they may have to start at the bottom with a new profession. And they're going to have to go back to, day one.
Getting hazed.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to start. Get me the stud bender.
Yeah. How are you going to handle that as a 50-year-old? You know what I mean?
It's tough. I work for a guy that's younger than me right now.
Well, but I mean, I think if you're a little bit older and a little bit wiser, you know how to navigate through those steps a lot quicker than a lot of other younger guys that you're with, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, you kind of take it with a grain of salt. I had a couple guys that were younger that wanted to bow up on me, wanted to throw down.
Oh, yeah.
I
would imagine. Now, this is when
when I was initial to ownership, and probably rightfully so.
Yeah.
I was kind of a dick. I had a big ego. I was like, look at me. I own a business. And I did a lot of things the wrong way. I think all of us did. My brother, myself, my dad, and it was tough for me and my brother, I believe, too, because we had the colonel. He was one of the owners, and they didn't want to look at me and my brother as the bosses. They immediately go to the colonel. I mean, because look at him. I mean, years of respect, years of leadership.
Yeah.
So it's hard to establish yourself as, no, I'm running operations, because you overcompensate basically.
Yeah, I could imagine, especially when someone has like notoriety coming into a leadership position and they say, and you that has a job to do, and you say, hey, look, there is a, what do you call it? A chain of command, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you have to follow. I am your boss. You have a boss. I have a boss. So before you can go to jump to what, like you would call the colonel, right? You need to come to me. You have to let me handle that situation. We're going to figure this out. You don't need to involve him.
And if you jump, there's issues.
Right. If you go to the colonel because of the notoriety of him being a colonel and him being who he is and the effective leader that he is and genuine badass. But if you jump me, you still have to come back to me at some point.
And I kind of understand the theory behind it and their thinking, because you look at a guy like that. I hold my father in high regard, but years of being in military leadership and the way he handles himself, his poise, calmness, I mean, that you look up to that. It's easy to follow that. Then you have a young guy. I think I was 29 and my brother was 25 when we were running shit. And, it's easy for them to shift into, well, this is what Zach says, but maybe it's not correct. I wonder what the colonel says. But then you're jumping chain, and he had to push it back. And he always told me growing up, I don't know if it's correct anymore, you can only serve one master. You can't have two people telling you what to do.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And he would push it back down. He knows the way to do it, but there was always that aspect where people would, wonder what he was thinking.
I would imagine. I mean, and if you have a leader that's like held in such high regard from the bottom to the top, even if you are one of those people at the top and you've got a bunch of people below you that are like, man, I just would love to see what he would do in this situation.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you've known people like that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, upper level officer type that very calm, collected, but you could see confidence. I mean, just coming out of their pores.
Well, it's nice to know that you have someone that you work with and or that you are coordinating with that will always be able to handle whatever you're dealt.
Right? Yeah.
So when you have that type of person that literally can handle anything that's thrown at them, you aspire to be like that person first off, right? And you say, hey, holy shit, I want to be like this guy.
Parts of it.
Right.
We had very different
of course, but
business strategies.
But what I mean is that, like, when you see the attributes that you're talking about, the calmness, the decision making, the ability to like assess situations, make a decision, take action, and know that everything's going to turn out the best possible scenario that you can be given. When you see those types of leaders,
it instills confidence in everybody else.
Not only that, but you try to emulate that, right? Especially as a younger guy that doesn't know a ton about leadership at the point, right? And you're like, oh man, I got the colonel above me. I know people will like look up to him. I know why. I'm trying to mirror that. I want to mimic that. You know what I mean?
And he was the type of guy that was more conservative in his business approach, where he would grow in a small aspect every year, where I was one that was, I'll spend every dime and I want to take over the world. I want to put everybody out of business. And there's positive and negatives to that. He's consistent. He's going to be successful no matter what. I was willing to have no profit for 3 years, but then see major profits in the next 5.
Right. So he kind of had that like
he was a calming effect on me.
Right. He had that old bull mentality where he was like, hey, you know what? Like, let's walk down the valley. That old joke. Let's walk down the valley and get them all. So I feel like a lot of people that have been through a lot of shit are all kind of that way. But there are some older guys that have made their way doing the type of mentality that you're talking about, where you're just an absolute shark, where you're like, no remorse. I'm going after people. I'm poaching people.
And that's what I did. Right. I went to everybody in the area. I would steal their best guys. And I'd get wound up and emotional, and you could see it, where he was monotone and completely calm, where you never know what's going on in his head. It kind of freaks you out.
Right.
Where with me, you just look at me and you're like,
oh, he spun out.
Yeah, homeboy's fucking freaking out. Like, they know what's going on in my head.
Yeah.
So he brought that calm and collected, and it's intimidating. You see somebody like that and you're like, what the fuck's going on in his head?
Especially when you think everything's in chaos and the dude's over there just like calculating in his own mind, and he's got that look on his face like he already knows what he's going to do.
You're his son. He's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you, let's go back to the fact that you were talking about how you were in the same city for both of these big events to happen in our modern history, right? Especially within our lifetimes, and maybe some people that would be too young to remember 9/11 as far as when it happened or why. So you were talking about how you were on a naval base at the time. Was that because you were there actually serving and you were part of that? Or
no, at that point I was in tech school. And my initial job out of boot camp, I was a sonar tech, surface. We were like listen for submarines. It was the most fucking boring job in the world. But I was on that training base in Point Loma.
Okay.
So we look across, we see North Island, Coronado, all that shit. It was real short across from us. And when I was there, when it happened, I remember I was walking into to class that day. I got into the training area and it was very somber. And I was like, what the fuck's going on?
It's just a weird.
I was pretty happy.
Yeah.
It's like I'm in San Diego. I'm from Nebraska. I'm at the beach. It's cool. And I get in there and then I see on the news what's happening, and it was shock to everybody. We absolutely could not believe this shit. And so immediately everything went to lockdown. Being right there on the border, I mean, TJ, TJ is a scary place to begin with.
Are you talking about Tijuana?
Tijuana,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
So we're just 10 minutes away from there.
Right.
And, it's sketchy to begin with, but then they locked everything down. They locked the borders down. We couldn't go across. Everything like that. I guess, according to the military, they had Al Qaeda, whatever you want to call it, at that point, like jumping military members, taking their ID, and then forging them to make military IDs for Al Qaeda members to get across, get on military bases. So they put us on lockdown, and it was pretty sketchy for a while. Like I said, you had the mixed emotions of shock, terror, revenge, anger, wrath. It was weird because people didn't know how to interact at that point. They didn't know how to mix those emotions.
Right.
And like I said, especially New York boys. And a lot of those guys on my base, they knew guys out there that passed, or firemen,
right,
or first responders. And
well, then you not to interrupt you here too much, but if you look at the history tract of America as far as foreign wars in specific groups of people that are involved with those, we don't have a good track record with that, right? And so I think there's a lot of, and even currently, there's a lot of people that say, hey, there are minorities in the United States that are being discriminated against because of things that are happening outside of their control. And, the Middle Eastern population was part of that during 9/11, and even years after that happened, there was news reports, there was people saying that, Middle Eastern people are being targeted specifically because...
Well, same as World War II with the...
Oh, yeah.
With Asians.
And that's what I mean. That's kind of what I was getting at. Is the Asian concentration camps that we had here in America, right? We haven't gone that far ever again, thank God, right? Because that was terrible. But there's people that see the effect of that now. And I think everyone can agree that it's a fucking problem, right? That everyone can agree that you cannot just discriminately hate someone based on how they appear. I think anyone and everyone can agree on that. And then at the same time, the media and or news networks inflate the fear and the anger amongst general American populaces, and they say, well, XYZ is to blame for this. And it's like,
kind of fuel the divide.
Right, exactly my point. And they're trying to fuel the divide, and they do it. They absolutely, fuel that divide. And so you're like, when you're a normal person like myself that has an everyday average day life, and you're like, man, that sucks that, this minority is getting targeted by people. But then I'm the exact person that the media is describing as the person that's targeting these minorities. And you're like, well, hold on a minute. I would never do that. I don't know anybody that would do that. I don't associate myself with people that would do that. So don't, don't lay blame on me. You're doing the exact thing to the minority people that you're suggesting are
You know how kids have temper tantrums?
Right.
Because they don't know how to vent their anger and fear. I think that's kind of what it is. Like, people, they want something to blame. They don't know what to blame, so they do stupid shit.
Yeah.
Whereas the military, I mean, your core fundamental objection or object is to get your guy 6. I mean, there is no color in the military. I believe, it doesn't matter. If you're in the military, for the most part, you're there because you believe in the hardcore cornerstone of fundamental beliefs of this country. And I didn't see any division in the military.
I would agree with that. And to kind of bring it back to what you're talking about, I don't think that in the military members that I know, I have never really ever seen any kind of, discrimination and or marginalization towards any specific type of personalities, right? Now, in the military specifically that I know of, I know there's jokes that go around that are probably insensitive and things like that. But, you and I have talked about this, way before. A lot of the times is that all that is required of anybody that goes to the military is to do their job, right? That's it. do your job. If you're a person in the military, all you need to know is if the person that you're working with can do their job. And if they can do their job, it doesn't matter what they look like.
Teach the guy below you to do your job.
Right. Or what they look like, what they do, what they like. None of that matters as long as they can do the job that is required of them and they can be there, right? Like you're talking about. All that matters is that I know this person has my 6. That's all I care about, right? And I think that when you say something like that, it resonates with people like me, right? I think that's kind of what almost anyone can boil it down to is that like, hey, you know what? I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you believe in. I don't care what your hobbies are. That doesn't mean I don't want to disparage you for that by any reason.
The military has an advantage, though, because they're one common goal, one common knowledge, and we all study the same thing, same training. Whereas in the civilian life, when you look at it, walk a mile in my shoes. Nobody understands the daily of another race, culture, money group, anything like that. They don't know. So what you don't know scares you.
Oh, yeah.
Big
time. Like
I said, in the military, same goal. Everything's the same. It's not in the civilian life. So that freaks people out. Yeah. You can't understand it till you've been through it.
Yeah. I mean,
fear of the unknown.
I get it too, as far as that's concerned. But, so if you don't mind me asking you, when 9/11 happened, you were on a military base, you were going through initial training, right? And you said lockdowns happen immediately. You guys go into, some kind of readiness status that's way high, obviously. What happens to you at that point as far as, what's going through your mind? And then if you can say, what were you able to do to help as far as the whole thing is concerned?
Nothing. We were helpless. We were in a training command. We were, newbies. Yeah. So we were contained to barracks almost initially till they figured out what the hell was going on. And at that point, you're just in the beginning stages of your training. There's nothing you could do. Nothing.
Yeah.
So it was a feeling of helplessness, but also motivation at the same time. A lot of people switch rates after that, switch their jobs up. But it was kind of a limbo time because we didn't know what to do. Training got shut down for a few days. What do? You don't know. You don't know how to respond to that. You haven't been trained for that yet. You still have the civilian mindset because we're fresh out of boot camp. I think we were 3 months out of boot camp. So in boot camp, you learn one way to do things and you're gung-ho, diesel.
Oh, yeah.
You want to go hard.
I would imagine.
And the guys above you are like, you know what the fuck you're doing. You have no idea what's going on. Just go back to your barracks.
Yeah.
So it was a time of confusion and kind of helplessness.
Yeah.
But you have bases all around you. In San Diego, there
are spinning up probably,
tons of
right?
them. And you'd see them like we could see Coronado right across. And we saw things just kicking off. And we're like, ooh, I want to do that.
I would imagine that you, especially because how old were you, if you don't mind me asking?
I was 21 at the time.
Oh, yeah. So if you're 21 at the time and
I was meaner, tougher, and smarter than everybody at that time.
Well, not only that, but
at least I thought so.
When someone attacks your homeland and you're that age and you've already gone to the military training status that you've been in, I'm sure all you think about is just like how you can just get over there and start affecting change as far as like America is going to get what they deserve.
Yeah, we had 100,000 Chuck Norrises in San Diego at that time.
Exactly. And that's what I mean. America is going to get their vengeance. They're going to get what they need. And we're gonna recover from this, right? We're gonna ensure that we get what was given to us double, triple, tenfold. That's gonna happen to you.
You would not believe after that happened how many people from New York enlisted at that point. And then Texas, not to be outdone, was like, fuck you, New York. We're going to come back and match you just because they're Texas.
And you can even watch the movie American Sniper, you know, the story about Chris Kyle. And it was cool as shit. You know, Chris Evans that's who played that, right? Chris Evans? Oh, Bradley Cooper. I'm sorry. Bradley Cooper played Chris Kyle. His portrayal of him at the beginning of the movie was fantastic, right? Texas boy. And he sees the events that happened on 9/11, and he immediately was like, how do I help? He goes to a recruiter immediately and says, send me where you need me. And the guy was like, we need you in the highest tier of the most badass professional dudes in this earth. Do you think you can cut it? He was like, yeah, get me there now. And you're like, fuck yeah.
I have an interesting story about that. So that movie at the, I think it's closer to the end. They're at one of the military hospitals overseas. They're bringing a guy in that's being an amputee, about to cut his leg off. Uh-huh. And I'm at this concert in Reno. It's like a 90s throwback. It's like American Hi-Fi. God, a bunch of other 90s bands. It was great. But they were doing a military fundraiser, and it was Melissa Joan Hart, Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yeah.
And then Johnny Mosley, some other person I didn't really know. And then this dude with a prosthetic, and he was wearing this badass Columbia hat. It was the American flag with the fish.
Yeah.
And I was wearing a Browning hat, and I didn't know who he was. I walked up to him, I'm like, sweet hat, dude, can I have it? And he traded me straight across. Ended up being the dude in real life that was getting carried in there to get amputated. He played himself in the movie.
Was he also the guy towards the end of the movie where he's shooting the rifle with Chris Kyle?
You know, I'm not sure. I just know he was the amputee, but he was great.
That's badass, though.
He was a cool dude.
That's good. That's
and
good
yeah, I just couldn't believe it. He's like, yeah, you ever seen that? And I'm like, yeah, I've seen that. And he's like, that was me. I'm like, really?
So
are you an extra?
Do you still have that hat?
Of course I do, dude.
Yeah, good shit.
No, actually, the hat's gone, but I kept the patch.
Really?
Yeah, the hat went to shit. It was one of those mesh on the back. So I took the patch off the front and kept it.
It started falling apart, and you were like, I'm keeping something of this.
Yeah, but he was cool. He was like, trade you straight across.
That's badass.
I'm like, sold, dude.
Absolutely. That's fucking cool, man. But it's just cool that, like you're talking about Texas, you even think of Marcus Luttrell, guys like those, like that. You know, their state didn't get attacked, but they understood that there's a higher calling. The United States was attacked. Though it happened in New York, it affects everyone. And it's very cool that Americans across the nation, you know, on 9/12 that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, that were like, this was a fucking horrible thing that happened to our nation. Everyone can unify and understand that, like, we need to fix this. We need to figure out the solution to the problem. And almost every single person in the United States was like, how can we help?
Yep.
You know, a lot of people can't be in the military for obvious reasons. A lot of people enlisted in the military because of that. A lot of people wanted to enlist in the military, but were turned away because of medical reasons and all kinds of other things. But the point is that everyone wanted to help. Everyone. And going back to the beginning, no one wants another 9/11 ever to happen again. But a lot of people, even nowadays, still want another.
I want a 9/12.
Big time.
Yeah. And what you're saying is interesting with Texas. I think a lot of people get annoyed. You know, everything's bigger in Texas. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. I'm sick of your Texas bullshit. But you got to respect a state that has so much pride.
Oh yeah, big time. Especially that
not
part
just
of
in
union.
state, but in country.
Right, and that's what I mean is like they're part of a union, but they're still like, are we part of a union? You're like, yeah. You're like, well,
yeah, everything else they're like, we're Texas, bitch. Fuck you. We do what we want.
Yeah.
Then it comes to the country like, oh yeah, we got you.
Yeah, Texas is like, yeah, I get it. We're one of the stars in the flag, but at the same time, like, we don't want to be. So we're gonna try everything we can to make sure that we're still just Texas. You're like, all right, I respect it.
It was a good, the military was a good mix. I think I learned a lot about different like geographics and different upbringings.
Oh, that's a good point. So when you were in, even initial training, did you have people that came from other parts of the nation that talked, acted, brought in information.
We had them all.
That were just like so foreign to you, and these are Americans, right? They're from different corners.
Yeah, I was pretty literate in the whole Southern thing and Texas thing, but when it came to the Northeast, I mean, these guys freaked me out.
Really?
They absolutely freaked me out. New Yorkers, and then we had this tiny little fucker from Providence, Rhode Island, that scared the shit out of me. He was about 5'3", and probably the meanest little shit I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
Yeah. So our RDC told us, he was like, I don't want to hear any of your problems. Go to the head, figure it out yourself. And I threw a haymaker on this kid, landed it hard, and he didn't really react and scared the shit out of me. And he proceeded to pummel me. And at this point, I'd never had my ass kicked. So this little 4'6", we'll say now, mean kid.
Shorter.
He was a kid in the, like when we did the gas chamber. Yeah. He came out and all of us were just dying. He was like, they do this shit all this time back home. The cops do this all the time. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? We're all dying.
Right.
And he was good. And I'm like, yeah, this dude has issues. So I met him, and then a bunch of guys from New York. And I mean, the Southern boys were the best. They were the greatest. I mean, good hearts. I had a kid from South Carolina that used to pick up women in San Diego. And like, have y'all ever heard of a place called South Kakalaki? Because that's where I'm from. And he would just tear it up with the Southern California girls.
Yeah, I know a couple guys with that type of accent. And for some reason, whenever they go outside of where they live, people love it. People love it. Women, men, even men are like, where you from? Even dudes will be like,
they used to be like, boy, you country. I'm like, what? What?
Yeah. It's funny as shit, though, man. I mean, it is hilarious to, like I said, I know some people that have that type of accent, and you're like, that's funny. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. And there's some women that like swoon over it.
Go crazy.
You're like, well, good for you, I guess.
They love the boys from down south. I had one dude from Brooklyn, and he was much older than all of us. He was about 10 years older, joined late, and he was kind of our caretaker. You know, because you get paid. You live on base. You don't need any money, so you go out and blow your paycheck.
Yeah.
In one weekend, just idiotic shit. And he was the one always taking care of us. Like, you need to slow it down. I'll put you in a cab. Give me your wallet. You're not spending any more money. He took care of us, but he like thick Brooklyn, and girls down there loved that too. But he was one of those older dudes, calm, collected, been through some shit, rough upbringing. So you meet different kinds up there. It's weird.
I would imagine.
A lot of Midwest country kids, you know, that just ain't the brightest, but they're like all America, dude.
Old America. I mean, that's another thing that people kind of take for granted. It was a big part of when I grew up was that America's a melting pot, right? You've got all these people from all over the world. And then if you even rewind it back to the foundation of our country as a whole, with all the good and bad things from that, we've created this melting pot, right, of the American citizen. How do you define the American citizen? Well, to me, that is only determined by the assimilation of American culture.
Yeah, and that culture is not so much based on your upbringing or where you came from anymore.
Right.
Or your heritage. It's based on your geographic location at this point.
But my point is that that's the point. America is a melting pot. You've got so many people from so many backgrounds and so many different upbringings and even foreign nationalities. It's this big pot of diversity, as it is right now. It is. It's huge. But, you know, when I was a kid growing up, there was one common thing that everyone appreciated, enjoyed, and wanted to be a part of, and that was American culture as a whole. And a big part of that was just even like simple stuff as like the American flag. And now a lot of times the American flag has become controversial, but it's like, why? You know what I mean? Why is the American flag controversial? Because it's the one thing that's supposed to unite everyone. 13 colonies, 50 stars, all 50 states, everybody in those 50 states, that flag applies to you, right? People want to stop it and say it's a symbol of hate and oppression and all these other things, of the things that we've done in the past that were terrible. And that's fine. I think everyone can
It's a symbol of your right to vocalize that opinion is what it is.
That too, right?
Just this last weekend, my friend and I went down to a cycle shop in Denver, very kind of trendy area. And I had a bar shirt on. It wasn't anything political. It said the name of the pub and had a American flag on the back. And 3 gals were sitting out there having breakfast, and they said, "You could see yourself right out of here with that shirt." And I was like, "What?" I mean, they came down on me for wearing American flag, where it's taboo to wear, represent your country. And it wasn't even anything political. Like I said, it was a bar shirt.
Right. And
But it was a symbol of negativity to them.
right.
And my buddy got bent. He was like, "I want to go back there." I'm like, "Dude, don't say a word. It's okay." But he was pissed about it, and rightfully so. I understand. If that's her opinion, cool. I'm good with it. But walk a mile. You don't know anything about me or what I stand for. I'm pretty moderate, pretty down the middle, but you see just one thing on my shirt and you judge me for it.
Right.
That's exactly what we're not supposed to do.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I mean. And I didn't mean to really get in too much into the flag conversation part of this, but as far as just being an American, right? Just being an American, the American culture is one of the most accepting cultures ever, probably in any history of all time. It is the most accepting. I 100% stand and believe that. It is the most accepting of all people from every background and every nationality, making the melting pot that I referenced earlier. And the thing about the American flag is that it represents all of that. And there's some people that say it only represents the white people that built the nation. And it's like, okay, well, I don't think that's I don't believe that. I don't believe that the flag represents just colonials that built the nation off the backs of, slavery. I don't believe that. I believe that if you live here, you're an American. Bad things have happened in the past. Some things happen to propel us to the future that we are now. Whether they were good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't matter. All you can do is try to improve where you are now, right? All you can do as a person, as an American citizen, is improve where you are now.
Yeah, history's a roadmap to avoid past mistakes.
Exactly. And then to dwell on those past mistakes and say, we built this society and this culture on the backs of whatever, or whoever, or colonists, whatever the case may be. All you can do as an American citizen is put your feet down on the ground, step up and say, I'm creating a new life for myself. I'm going to create a new trajectory for the people that I think are underrepresented, and not trying to erase things that happen, or not trying to say, hey, you know what? We won't tolerate you guys believing what you believe.
Yeah. Every mistake is a building block.
Build your own thing.
And there was a lot of bad shit. A lot of people got done dirty. I mean, through our history in this country.
Yes.
But at the same time, whatever country all of us came from, a lot of bad shit there too. So they're stepping stones.
I would almost say worse.
Yeah, but you have to learn from those and, move past them and get better from it.
Right.
When you start erasing those things and pretending they didn't happen, then how do you learn from it?
Or only focusing on the bad things that happen, right? It's like, well, what is focusing on the worst parts of our history?
And it's almost like we're tit for tat right now.
Right.
Where, well, you did me dirty, now we get this, or anything. And like I said, I respect all people's different walks of life, but they're all different. Again, we don't know. We don't understand.
And to your point about your shirt is like, you shouldn't do that, right? No one should ever just start judging people by how they dress, how they look, what they wear on their back, the clothing they wear. Obviously, someone that is wearing absurd, ridiculous shit, you can call out on. And I'm generalizing here.
Yeah.
If someone in America is wearing a shirt that has some kind of flag on it at all, there's no necessary reason that you need to disparage that person.
And like I said, my buddy got bad. Like he was pissed. And I just told him, I was like, listen, anybody that served, they served for that very reason.
Right.
They have the right to express their feelings about it, whether I agree with it or not.
Right.
That's what we stand for.
And to go back to that point,
did I like it? No, I didn't like it.
You can be upset about it, but if you served for it, right, like you're talking about, that is the exact reason you served for it, because you were giving that individual.
I walked to the corner and just shut my mouth.
Yeah, you give that right to that individual to say, "Hey, I don't like that," and you're like, "Okay, cool." You know what? As an American, you being here right now at this bar, you are so free and you are so liberated to say,
"You're welcome.
Get your fucking shirt out of here." And you, as a person wearing it, you're like, "All right,
you're welcome." That you can say that, and that's kind of shitty to say, but
right? No, but
it's one of those things where I had to walk away because I didn't want to pursue that conversation because I know I wouldn't have been able to remain calm.
Yeah, what can you do though? I mean, like if you were to engage that conversation, there's no good outcome that comes from that.
Grow up past 25 and then like have some life experience and then talk to me about it. But
even if that person was, it doesn't matter where that person came from, how old they are, who they were. There's nothing you're going to say that was going to change their mind on that or help them have a perspective from someone like you that's wearing the shirt, right? So I think absolutely the best move would be is just be like, Roger that. Thank you for your insight on my apparel. I appreciate your input. We'll see you later.
Yeah, I wish people would be of the mindset where I have my beliefs in life, my stance, and I don't really broadcast them. But if somebody wants to educate me, by all means, I'll listen. If you can change my mind, good for you. I'll at least hear you out.
But I think that's a big thing that's missing in the first place, though, is the ability to just sit back and listen to people, right?
Yeah, but people demonize the other if they have different beliefs now.
Right.
They will not give people the opportunity to actually speak and tell them why they believe that.
I guess it boils down to the fact also that, like, if I see somebody with a political statement on their shirt, I don't judge them on that. I don't look at that shirt and already know, all right, okay, I know who you are already. Do I have my preconceived notions? Sure. But is that going to prevent me from having a conversation with that person? No. I will still talk to that person and be like, hey, what's your shirt about? You know, like, tell me about it. And you can just engage in a conversation simply by saying, hey, tell me what you believe in and why. And if you tell me about it and you're passionate about it, you know what, good for you, dude. I am not going to tell you should change your mind. I'm just going to tell you what I believe and why. And if that influences that person by any fucking measure, and they start questioning their own, beliefs and their own righteousness, and they say, oh shit, well, maybe I've been a little bit too harsh on judgment of other people. I think that is fundamentally huge, right? Because I'm not going to sit here and talk to someone from the opposite end of the spectrum and try to push my narrative on them. I'm not going to say, hey, you need to believe this, or why don't you believe this, or how are you so blind to not knowing this?
You can politely state that you disagree, but
right.
This is my opinion. It's kind of like in Billy Masterman. He's like, I disagree. Donkey Kong is the greatest game ever. But just be open-minded.
Give me a snack pack.
To converse like that is the way to go about it. But there's a lot of people that are influenced and have life-altering experiences from one instance. A bad experience with a cop, bad experience with the court system, anything that can completely turn the table on the way they think for the rest of their life. So it's one of those where, and you can't really blame people for that. There's baggage that comes with it, but you would hope that people would say, okay, you know what? Let me hear you out.
Yeah.
Let me not judge all of these by the actions of one, because there's bad apples in every profession.
Right.
Every single one. I mean, we've seen them. No matter what.
Of individuals and their ability to make their own decisions and all that stuff. You hail from Nebraska, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So obviously a person that neighbors Nebraska basically in Colorado, especially with the rivalry where I'm from, football is a big time sport over there. Is that correct?
Poquito, yeah.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the culture that surrounds Nebraska Cornhusker football.
It's it's all we got. I mean, as far as major sports, we don't have any pro teams, no other major university. I guess Creighton's getting kind of big at this point in basketball, but for years and years, it was, at that point, Big 8 football, Nebraska, Oklahoma, every year in powerhouses. And Nebraska sells out every game, I believe, since 63, 62, 63, 1962. And that streak is still going as long as they count not being able to sell tickets for COVID. But it's one of those things where you have people of all ages. I mean, and different backgrounds, farmers, ranchers, people from Lincoln, people from Omaha. And you have little old ladies in their 80s, 90s in the stands. And it's great. I mean, it's the third biggest city in Nebraska during game day. And you've seen, it's a great atmosphere. For years we were a powerhouse in the 90s, and we won a number of games, consecutive home streak. Texas came in and beat the brakes off us. I mean, they beat us solid. And at the end of that game, Nebraska stood up, standing ovation to Texas, just for doing it. I mean, people know their football, but it's kind of in the blood. I mean, once you're in, it never goes away.
Yeah.
Which I think you've seen.
Yeah, and disclaimer for the audience here. I have been in a Nebraska or two game, and it is fantastic. I think that people don't understand that though. I think people that aren't from Nebraska or even the surrounding states of it, and from big vanity type schools, the Ohio State, the Alabamas, Florida Gators, all these big schools, I don't think people take Nebraska seriously and or understand why it's so big, right?
And at this point, they shouldn't. I mean, it's cyclical. In the 90s, when we were powerhouse, 70s powerhouse, Alabama was garbage in the 90s. And, I mean, it kind of comes down to a few different things. At this point, Alabama's tearing shit up.
Yeah, well, enter Nick Saban builds a dynasty.
Amazing recruiting classes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now they have star ratings, but in the 90s at that point, there was no star ratings. But Nebraska, one of their biggest things was the walk-on program. And they got a lot of, born and bred country boys from Nebraska that were passionate about it. Football. They wanted to go at it.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, we got great athletes at that point too. But Nebraska's always been kind of that working class, no scholarship, walk on, earn your way. And that's kind of representative of the state. And so, Nebraskans take it personal.
Yeah.
They live and die by it. You lose the game. No, there's no weddings in football season. You do not put a wedding on a Saturday in football season.
Yeah.
And people, they get depressed. They get mad.
Well, going to Nebraska Cornhusker games, I know there's a lot of colleges that take tailgating seriously too, right? Big time,
Well,
I've only seen some. I've been a part of others. But the couple Nebraska games that I've been to, their tailgates have been absolutely better than most, I should say. Especially the ones I've participated in. I see some that are on TV, during college game day, during football season, that look really intense, and they have a lot of the paraphernalia of the team they're supporting. Ole Miss comes to mind when I speak of that. Ole Miss has, from what I've seen on the TV, they have a lot of paraphernalia of Ole Miss, and it seems like they have the parking lots stacked full of people.
It's great.
But having witnessed a couple of other universities that are kind of similar in stature for Ole Miss, and then visiting Nebraska the couple of times I've been there and seeing what people bring to the table as far as tailgate is concerned, I don't think it's even in the same spectrum.
I mean, we've started on, Thursdays when we go up there?
Yeah, dude.
Tailgate Thursday till Saturday.
It's nuts. I mean, people, I'm sure this happens in other states and other universities, but, people buy, people will buy ambulances that are decommissioned and turn it into a gigantic tailgate party, and they'll put TVs all over them and they'll use the flashing lights and sirens as the Nebraska, red and white. This shit's crazy, man. And it's fantastic. I loved it, every bit of it.
And it is fun. So I lived down south, and I went to a lot of the SEC games, and trust me, they're great.
Oh, yeah.
I've been to Florida games, Georgia,
LSU, I'm sure, yeah.
I actually went to Ole Miss too, and the tailgating is amazing.
Oh yeah,
food is by far better down there. The sundresses are by far better, but when it comes down to the pure, down south they love football. They're all about football, but there's so many different options. Especially there's states with multiple big schools. Nebraska, it's the only one,
right?
And people actually are open and welcoming to the opposing crowd. Come on, give me a free beer. Give me a free beer. Well, they're all about it. They're nice.
That's a good point to make, by the way, is like the southern states especially have a lot of other, not only sports programs to go off of, right? Because baseball is big in the South, for sure. But they typically have more other schools and or have professional teams that are part of those states and local regions. And like you said, Nebraska doesn't have any of that. Nebraska Cornhusker football is absolute in Nebraska. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Right? And like I said, and the fact that we welcome people. We want to have a conversation.
The fandom is great.
We want to give people free beers. Down Auburn, Alabama, they're like, we're going to poison your trees. Roll
you
Tide.
walk around here.
Yeah,
you go to Alabama and you wear an LSU shirt.
We don't like your con round y'all.
Yeah.
The Nebraska were like, come in. Let's talk some football. Give you some free beers.
Yeah,
they're pretty nice about shit, except for that Miami game we went to.
That was a good time, though.
That was fun. We didn't like the Miami people at that point.
No, didn't like Miami people, no. But they were kind of assholes, though.
They were. Remember that one dude was trying to hit on that 14-year-old, and we're like,
yeah,
buddy. I'm excited to see it get going again this year.
Yeah, I'd hope so.
Actually, the Big Ten announced they're going to allow fans. What percentage, we don't know. Little disappointed that they canceled the game in Ireland this year.
That sucks.
But they're hopefully moving it to next year.
Yeah, I would hope so too, honestly.
Because that's a bucket list thing.
Absolutely. For sure.
Be good.
For sure. Especially, going back to the melting pot of America, there's a lot of Irish descendants around here. Mm-hmm. Irish, English.
We're one of them.
All of it. Yeah.
My grandpa, sure. I believe County Moy, I think. But he's straight off the boat.
Yeah, well, I come from a family that has a lot of mixed blood, a mutt, and also Irish, Scottish, Welsh, English, a lot of that. And then my wife is a lot of Scottish Irish, Yeah,
I could see that.
So we both have a lot of the Western European in us on both sides of our families. Hers, mom and dad's sides, and my mom and my dad's side too. So there's a lot of that. And you can definitely see it in our child, for sure.
I was pondering going down to Norman this year.
Yeah.
Nebraska plays at Oklahoma, which we're probably going to get the brakes beat off us. They're probably going to destroy us.
Talking about the Sooners?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they're probably going to be top 3-4 in the nation preseason.
Think so?
Yeah, but I want to go down and watch it this year.
I would fucking love to go.
Might as well see it, I guess.
You only live once, dude. It's only money. You can't take it with you.
I'm sure there's no mask down there.
Probably not.
We'll go have some fun.
Exactly. And I think that, to go along with what we've been talking about kind of this whole podcast is I think businesses, I mentioned this in the first episode I ever posted. I think businesses are going to just say, hey, you know what? If you're comfortable with wearing a face mask, go ahead. We're not going to stop you. And if you are comfortable with not wearing a face mask, okay, we're not going to make you wear one. So everyone's welcome.
Yeah.
And you can do whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, we're not going to harass you either way.
Problem solved.
Mask, no mask. It's up to you.
Problem solved.
It'd be a lot better. Some businesses don't have a choice. They're coming down to bottom line.
Well, and we talked about this kind of a little bit earlier.
They got to keep the doors open.
Well, a lot of the corporative businesses, have corporative direction that say you will, must, shall, will.
They got corporate money though.
Right, exactly. Must, shall, will. You must do this. You shall do this, and you will do this. Right. Yep.
Whereas my company, we will not open the office back up until 70% of that office employees are vaccinated. So in the Denver office, there's around, I believe, 150 employees, 200. So until 70% of that office employees are vaccinated, we will not open the doors.
See, but like, what's the point of that though? Like, and how would they even know that? How would they even know that?
Because you have to register on our corporate website when you get your shot and all that, which I understand where they're coming from. They have to protect their back and they have to.
But I feel like that's a gigantic violation of personal information. How are you going to ask somebody that they're vaccinated?
Let me restate this. They also give you the option, if you have any pre-existing or just are uncomfortable going back in, they are giving you the option to work remote.
And that's fine. But I guess my point is that, like, how are they going to expect people to tell them the personal information of their employees and say, yeah, I'm vaccinated? What if I did get vaccinated and I said, I'm not going to fucking tell you if I am or not?
Yeah, and I get where you're coming from. To me,
how can they?
I stand by the fact that this is personal information. It's nobody's business. But right. I'm also at the point where it's a shot in the arm. Right. Do I really care if people know or not know? Now, if they required for me to tell them, that'd be one thing. But if they're letting me, offer that information up, I'm fine with it.
Well, but here's where I kind of disagree.
Because there's HIPAA laws where they cannot require you to divulge medical information.
Right. And that's kind of what
don't require it, but if they ask me to offer that information up, I'm fine with it. It's a shot in the arm. What do I care?
Right.
I'm not telling them I got the HIV or anything.
So I guess my point is that if you were to get the vaccination, right, you as the employee of the company that you're working for, and you say, hey, I'm going to get the vaccination, boom, I want to make sure that we get 70% of vaccinated people.
Actually, I wouldn't, because I don't want to go back in the office. The office sucks.
Right.
But I would offer the information up.
Right.
Until they required it, then just out of principle, I would say no.
So I guess trying to shorten this up, why is 70% their goal? What is the science behind that?
I think most of it is a comfort level.
Okay. But why though? Like, why is it 70%? Why is it not 90? Why is it not 100?
I don't know.
Why is it not 50?
That I have no idea. But from what I understand, we're a very young, millennial-based company. And whether they did some kind of questioning, anything, I don't know. 70% is the number they came out with. And people are a little bit more influenced at that age. They don't really have their... Let me back that up.
Individualism.
They haven't really formed years of history to develop their opinions yet. They just kind of go with the flow. So for some reason, they said 70% is the number.
Right, and I don't mean to grill you on it. I'm not trying to take it out on you as a whole. My point is that why the fuck is it 70%? Why? Is it just a random fairy tale number that they were like, hey, you know what? I think we can operate normal.
Like I said, 70% of our staff. I think they sent out company-wide a census and asked people what their comfort level is. Like, would you be comfortable if 5 out of 10 people were vaccinated to open the office? 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 7 out of 10? So I believe they did that. Is that 100% sure? No, but that's what I've heard. Now, does it make any sense? Is it factually based? No. I think it's based on people's comfort level.
Okay, and that's fine. I can get on board with people's comfort level for sure. Absolutely, right? If you don't feel safe in a work environment.
Like I said, they also give you the option to not come in, work remote.
Right. And the other thing about it too is that the state of Colorado can say, hey, you can't have your people come back here and work in the office until 90% of you are vaccinated. And you're like, well, hold on. How can you dictate the percentage of people that I employ are vaccinated? They say, well, it's a pandemic. There's emergency powers going on right now. But you as a business owner, you're like, well, that doesn't just give you the absolute right to dictate who's vaccinated and when.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost martial law at that point.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say here is that why are there specific numbers for specific things? And if it's based purely off a comfort level, fine. You know what? Good for people that work for those companies. If they're comfortable with those levels, that's fine. Good for them. But at the same time, it's like, well, I don't give a shit about vaccination level. I give a shit about actual people affected by the virus directly that are involved with my line of work, right? Or even the general U.S. American populace. Who do I know that has suffered from this disease? Several people. Who do I know that has passed away from this disease? Several people. Who has it affected in my line of work? Very few. Who has it affected as a whole in an age group that I know of? Very few.
Yeah, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't at this point.
Right.
You know, set a number, don't set a number. I don't care. If you're comfortable going to work, go to work. Then the problem you have is if you're not comfortable, don't. But then you have people that are going to fucking work the system, get paid to not go to work. So it's like there's no win right now for the companies.
I don't think there's any win for anyone right now, honestly.
Like personally, I'm fine. I'm not worried about it. You know, people have concerns about it. And I'm good with that. My folks did because of their age and their, you know,
right,
pre-existing. And I understand that completely. I'm not personally afraid of it.
I
think I've been exposed. I think I actually had it, but it's not a concern to me. I'll go to work. I'll go see people.
I think that everyone's kind of at a lose-lose right now. And it's a culmination of everything we've talked about tonight, right? If you put it on small businesses and you say, hey, you are required to do such, people are like, you can't tell small businesses to do that. And the small businesses do that and they say, hey, you are required to do such. And then they start losing their business. They start going down under all those things. And then you got corporations that say, hey, we need a vaccination level, or we're only going to require, or we are going to require people to wear face masks.
I think people are so confused, and there's such a lack of facts and knowledge on this where they just kind of play it by ear.
And that's kind of what,
you know, we're like, oh, you know what? Today we're going to do this. Oh, fuck that.
Right.
We're doing this now. They don't know. So they're just kind of like quick reactions.
Right. And, you know,
because of our political climate, they're trying to appease
on that.
and, you know, please one side or the other and keep everybody new. So they're forced in this position. They're like, we're doing this.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I mean is that like everyone's at a lose-lose. And then you've got all these businesses, small town businesses that get affected by it. You've got corporations that get affected by it. And then you've got, you know, people in government that are in charge of directing the whole, you know, outcome of this whole thing, trying to curb the terrible thing that it is and what it is. And then you have people saying, well, you know, one mask, you know, masks help. And you're like, all right. A lot of people get on board with that and they say, okay, masks help. I'll wear a mask.
Cool.
And then
wear your mask.
And then there's data that comes out that says, well, wearing a mask doesn't really do much of anything at all unless you wear the proper mask, which is hundreds of dollars that the normal American citizen doesn't have. And you're like, okay, well, but still, like, something over my face has got to help, right? So most businesses and most people fucking jump on board. And then you got Dr. Fauci that comes out and says, you know what? It's just common sense that 2 masks will help.
Duh.
Right? And people start wearing 2 masks, and you're like, okay. I mean, I'm all about being on board with trying to help and be a part of the solution that all the advertisements and all these commercials say to be. But at the expense of what? At the expense of what? Because half the time it feels like there's just people that are trying to ask the general public to do things just to see if the general public will do it.
Play puppet master.
And that's kind of what I mean by that, right? It's like, it's almost like there's someone that's so powerful that's like, hey, you know what? See if they can wear fucking 2 masks. See if they'll go for 2 masks.
We got that fucking idiot, didn't we?
Yeah. And then someone comes out and they say, well, it's only common sense that if you wear 2 masks, it's better for you. And all of a sudden, you got people wearing 2 fucking masks.
I am completely fine with masks. I don't care.
And these people come out and they're like, I fucking told you that we could get people to wear 2 masks. I told you we could do it.
Give me my $10.
Yeah. You owe me $50.
I'm fine with it. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't take like anything off my life to put a mask on and put other people at ease until you tell me I have to.
Right. And I
Then
think
it's a matter of principle.
right. And I think that's kind of where a lot of people are, right? Like, I have no problem if putting a mask on absolutely helps, and it's definitive evidence that it does, right? They're like, if I wear a mask into a business with 2 people inside of it other than myself, and if my mask putting on stops the spread of COVID-19, I'll be like, all right, okay, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, cool. High five.
Sure. Okay, I'll wear my mask in here. I will wear a mask. But when there's so many contradictory studies that say, hey, you know what? Like, the masks do help, but only if you wear the right one.
Well, how about this? I'm vaccinated now.
Yeah.
I'm not at risk.
That's kind of what I'm.
But you still have to wear your mask.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at here. Is that, like, I'm all on board with helping out, but I'm not just going to blindly just take week by week policies.
Like I said, I'm all about making people comfortable because it's no skin off my back. It doesn't really affect us. For me to walk into a 7-Eleven, put a mask on for a minute, buy my shit, get out. Some lady in there is more comfortable. But then somebody tells me, you have to wear this mask. Then it changes things.
But and see, that's kind of where I've already myself have already passed that point where, like, you know what? I don't have to put on a mask for fucking anyone. Why would you, as a government, as a business, want me to put something over my face? Honest to God, why would you want that? Especially from a small business perspective, right? Because you would think that crime would skyrocket because of that, right? You say, hey,
it's the guy in the black mask.
Think about it. If you're a criminal, I'm not going to say what I do as a profession, but if you're a criminal and you know that everyone is covering their face when they go into a place of public nature at all, that makes your odds of success significantly higher, right? You say, hey, well, fucking, if I go into 7-Eleven, I'm required to wear a face mask. What's going to fucking stop me from being?
I read an article where it says percentage-wise, the majority of people that wear hoodies, they're black hoodies. Majority of masks, like the neck gaiters, are black. So if you're a criminal, you're like, all right, so I'm going to wear a black hoodie and a black mask. And when they say, who did it? You're like, the black hoodie, black mask. You're like, okay, there's 72 people in here.
Yeah.
Genius.
Yeah. I mean, but it's like, for real, what? If you're a criminal, why would you not do that? You know what I mean? It's pretty simple. And so by the point that I'm trying to get at here is that if I am a free American, as I am told I am, don't make me wear anything on my face when I come to give you product and service, right? And money. Like, all I want to do is come in and buy Gatorade from a gas station guy. I don't want to fucking put on a mask to come into your store for a minute and a half. That's all I'm going to be here for. Because I guarantee you, I don't have COVID. I'm not going to spread it to the people in your fucking store. That is what it is. And now, there are stores that say, hey, if you exhibit COVID symptoms, do not enter here. Or please don't enter here. You know what? I'm on board with that. Sure. I can jump on that. I can be a part of that. And I say, you know what? Yeah, dude, if you have a fucking fever, you got a sore throat, you're coughing, you have no you shouldn't be out anyway. You need to be at home. Yes, that sign's appropriate. But the thing is, if people are so fucking stupid and they feel that bad and they're going out in the first place, they're ignorant and they don't give a fuck about your sign anyway. So it's like, what do you do? What do you do?
Think about this. For a country that's completely anti-discrimination, which is cool, this whole thing is given full right to discriminate.
Against people that don't vaccinate?
Yes, or wear masks. Remember we were up in Grand Lake?
Oh, yeah.
We went in that bar, and we were like, what's the difference between this and a shirt over our nose? Well, we walked 3 feet to our table. It gave them the right to be like, we don't like you here, get out. It gives full right to be like, yeah, we don't like you, get out.
Yeah.
For no reason.
That was bullshit because there was a guy
about a foot and a half away from you.
As close as us to the end of that table that wasn't wearing a mask when that happened. And I said, that guy's not wearing a mask. And he said, well, he's sitting down. I go, okay.
And didn't he say you don't belong here anyway?
Oh, he said, we don't want you guys here anyway. You guys, right? He pluralized it. But I'm like, wait. I was like, I'll enter. I mean, I will admit we came in a little bit hot. But at the same time, it's like, hold on. There is no requirement of what a face covering is.
Yeah, you come in hot, and T's a big dude.
Yeah.
So those are like, oh, we don't want them around here anyway.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, dude, we just want to come in and have a beer and sit the fuck down. We're going to give you money. We're going to give you our money. Yeah.
We probably would have dropped a few $100 too.
I'm sure we would have. And the thing that pissed me off is, like I said, there was people that were as close to us right now, to the end of the table where we're sitting here, that were sitting down at bar stool
and they have a neck gaiter,
seats.
and you go like this, put your shirt over, and you're like, can I just do this to get my seat? No,
Yeah.
it's not the same.
They didn't have anything on their face. And I'm standing there like almost arm's length being like, they don't have a fucking mask. And he's like, well, you need one to be seated. And I said, okay. He goes, that's not going to cut it. All right, dude. All right. You don't want me here? Fine. Cool. And that might have been a very small anecdotal piece of evidence that says, you know, you were part of being in a small town town that doesn't want you there. Fine. I can accept that 100%. I've been kicked out of places plenty of times.
Yeah, walking up like this too. It's like
we were not. I will say, I don't think that we were so fucking aggressive that they immediately wanted to just kick us the fuck out. All we did was walk into that fucking place and be like, hey, we want a place to sit down and have some beers. And the guy was like, no, you need to have a mask on when you come in here. And you're like, okay, sorry. He's like, nope, that doesn't count. All right. Well, if you're going to fucking escalate this, I'm going to keep escalating it too.
I think you're deleting facts from that. Because I think there was more like, why? What the fuck? What's the point? And I think there's T going like this.
I am omitting a lot of information
Yeah.
from that, but at the same time, there is still like fundamental reasoning as to
I believe
why
I heard
I'm saying
that this is fucking stupid. I believe I heard that too.
But it goes back to the point that like there was people as far away from us that were sitting down at bar stool height seats that were as tall as me when I'm standing up. I'm like, this guy doesn't have a mask on. He's like, well, he's sitting down. I'm like, why does that matter? Why?
I just remember you guys coming out bent,
well,
pissed off, because I walked out and I'm like, I'm done.
It's because of that shit. And it's like, all right, dude, I will play your fucking game to get a seat. And then when I tried to play the game, he still wouldn't seat us. And it's like, all right, fuckhead, fuck you then. Done. All right. I'm 5 feet away from this guy. I'm 6 inches from this dude. No one's wearing a fucking mask and you're hating on us and you won't let us in here. Fuck you. Bye.
You don't need to be here anyway.
I guess not. Fuck him. I mean, at the end of the day, am I bent out of shape that he kicked us out? Yeah. But does it hurt me at all? Really? No, absolutely not. Because now he missed out on money that we were going to put into his owner's pocket and probably his own. So fuck him.
Yeah, we bought a bunch of beer for the same price as like 3 beers at that bar.
Yeah. Well, the place we went to afterwards was dope. But fuck those people, dude. I was so fucking mad about that. I'm like, use some common sense here, man. Common sense. I understand that the state's coming down hard on you and they're putting requirements and saying that you have to do X, Y, Z. Okay, I get it. But don't fucking assault me. And that's what that fucking asshole did. He insulted me. He insulted Tyler. And I was like, dude, you got guys in here sitting at the height that I'm standing at without masks on within fucking a foot from me.
Glad I
walking
lit
to
this
the front
fuse.
door. What's that?
I said I'm glad I lit this
whatever,
fuse.
Dick. You're just making me repeat myself. I hate it. Anyway, well, Zachary, I think it's time we tie this fucker off.
I think so.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, buddy.
It was fun.
I appreciate your perspective. Appreciate everything you've done. If you ever want to come back on, let me know.
Anytime, dude.
Get it squared away.
I'll be up here in another 2 months.
Hell yeah, brother. Hopefully we get you on back again. And we can talk more about how people piss you off about masks and shit. So
that was pretty easy to get you rolling there.
well,
Just light a fire, let you go.